The Galactic Union Assembly Hall was a masterpiece of alien architecture, a vast chamber where the hopes and fears of countless species converged. Its domed ceiling shimmered with the projection of a living galaxy, each star glowing faintly against the backdrop of eternal black. Beneath it, the delegates sat in concentric rings, their voices rising and falling in a cacophony of languages and tones. For many, this was the heart of diplomacy, a place where empires forged alliances and avoided wars. For others, it was a stage for spectacle and posturing. For humanity, it was a trial. At the center of the hall, standing alone on the raised platform, was Ambassador Lena Carr, dressed in a simple yet elegant navy suit. She carried herself with quiet confidence, though her heart pounded in her chest. Around her, holograms of alien faces and bodies flickered, their forms varying from the crystalline Zentrians to the gelatinous Moriths, each species representing an unbroken chain of galactic history that stretched back thousands of years. Humanity, by contrast, was young, an interstellar infant taking its first stumbling steps. And the galaxy had taken notice. "This is a waste of time," rumbled Thrask, the Mercurian delegate, his segmented exoskeleton glinting under the chamber's artificial lights. His voice carried a mechanical rasp, the result of his species' natural vocal cords augmented for interspecies communication. Why should the Galactic Union expend resources on protecting these newcomers? They offer nothing of value to the Union. No advanced technology, no significant fleet, and their biology. He let out a clicking sound that passed for laughter among the Mercurians. They are fragile. Breakable. A ripple of agreement echoed from a section of the hall, where other skeptics nodded their approval. Lena's fists clenched at her sides, but she forced herself to remain calm. "Fragile," she repeated, her voice cutting through the noise. "Perhaps. But I ask you, Delegate Thrask, how many of your kind have survived a nuclear winter? Or endured centuries of internecine war while still advancing your civilization? Humanity has faced extinction more times than we can count, yet we stand here today, ready to contribute to this union." Thrask's mandibles clicked irritably, but before he could reply, another voice joined the debate. Velza, the Korath delegate, whose serpentine form coiled gracefully around her floating podium, addressed the assembly. "Let us not forget their dietary habits," she said, her tone dripping with disdain. "Omnivores. Carnivores, even. They consume the flesh of their own world's fauna without a second thought. How can we trust a species so barbaric, so primal?" This time, the murmurs of agreement were louder. Many species in the Union were herbivorous, their evolution favoring peaceful coexistence over predation. To them, humanity's omnivorous nature was unsettling, a reminder of a more violent past they had long since abandoned. Lena took a slow breath. This was not unexpected. The xenophobia of the galaxy was subtle but pervasive, and humanity's duality as both predator and prey had always drawn unease. "Our dietary habits," she began, her voice steady, "are a reflection of our adaptability. Humanity is not bound to a single niche. We survive where others might falter because we are versatile. And as for trust..." She paused, letting her gaze sweep across the assembly. "Trust is earned. Allow us the chance to earn it." The hall fell into a brief, uneasy silence before another voice cut through. This one belonged to Delegate Phyrn of the Zentrians, a crystalline being whose words carried a melody of logic and calculation. "While I agree that humanity's potential is yet to be proven, dismissing them outright may be unwise," Phyrn said. "They have shown remarkable ingenuity. Their technological progress, while crude, is rapid. And their willingness to adapt to galactic norms suggests they may yet prove valuable." A few murmurs of agreement followed, though they were tentative. Before the debate could continue, the room dimmed, and a sharp chime signaled an incoming transmission. A hologram flared to life in the center of the chamber, and a collective gasp rippled through the assembly. The figure was unmistakable, Admiral Hryn of the Harrian Empire. Clad in crimson armor and exuding an aura of menace, his very presence seemed to sap the air from the room. The Harrian Empire was not part of the Union, it was their rival, a militaristic hegemony that sought to expand its borders through conquest. HRYNN's voice was a low growl, tinged with the arrogance of a predator addressing prey. Delegates of the Galactic Union, he began, his piercing yellow eyes sweeping the chamber. I come with a simple message. Earth lies on the border of my domain. It belongs to us. Surrender it, and avoid unnecessary bloodshed. The room erupted into chaos. Some delegates shouted in protest, others fell silent, and a few exchanged uneasy glances. The Harrians were not known for idle threats. Lena stepped forward, her voice rising above the noise. Admiral HRYNN, she said, her tone unwavering. Earth is a member of the Galactic Union. An attack on us is an attack on all of us. HRYNN's lips curled into a sneer. Is it? From where I stand, it seems your so-called allies barely tolerate your presence. Do you truly think they will bleed for you? You are alone, little human. For a moment, the weight of his words hung heavily in the air. But Lena refused to falter. You think humanity is weak because we are new. You think we are vulnerable because we are small. But let me assure you, Admiral, we are more than we seem. And if you come for us, you will find more than you bargained for. HRYNN's sneer deepened. Bold words for a prey species, he said. We shall see if you can back them up. With that, the hologram flickered and vanished. The assembly fell into a tense silence. Some delegates exchanged worried glances, others avoided meeting Lena's eyes. Finally, PHYRN spoke. It seems the question of humanity's place in the Union has become more urgent than anticipated. Thras clicked his mandibles, his earlier smugness replaced by grudging respect. For their sake, I hope their words hold weight. Lena returned to her seat, her heart still pounding. The battle for Earth's survival had begun, not on the battlefield, but here, in the heart of the Union. Humanity was no longer just fighting for acceptance. They were fighting for their very existence. The skies over Earth were alive with chaos. At first, it was just a faint glimmer in the night, a flicker of light in the upper atmosphere, so subtle that most dismissed it as a satellite or an ordinary meteor shower. But soon, the glimmers multiplied, transforming into streaks of fire that carved angry paths through the heavens. Humanity's orbital defenses sprang to life. Automated systems in the planetary grid identified the threat and activated, launching volleys of anti-ship missiles and energy blasts. On the ground, radar operators scrambled to interpret the data flooding their screens. This isn't a scouting party, said Major Elena Grant, stationed at NORAD's command center in Colorado. Her voice was tight with urgency as she pointed at the holographic display above her. That's a full-scale invasion force. Across the globe, humanity's military forces snapped into action. Fighter jets roared from airbases, and fleets of naval vessels repositioned themselves for coastal defense. Civilian broadcasts were interrupted by the calm yet chilling tone of emergency alerts. This is not a drill. All citizens are advised to seek shelter immediately. Martial law is now in effect. But even as humanity braced itself, the Harrian fleet descended with terrifying precision. Their dreadnoughts, massive ships that seemed to drink in the light around them, hovered ominously above major cities. Smaller frigates and dropships broke away, creating eerie patterns as they moved in synchronized waves toward Earth's surface. One such wave targeted Moscow. The cold, snowy streets became a staging ground for the Harrians' first planetary assault. The lead dropship landed with a hiss of pressurized air, its boarding ramp slamming down to reveal ranks of Harrian soldiers. Clad in black, segmented armor and wielding energy rifles, they moved with practiced efficiency, securing the perimeter within moments. From the rear of the formation, Commander Xyrith stepped forward. His crimson cloak contrasted sharply with his angular, insectoid features. He raised his hand, and the translator embedded in his chest activated. By decree of the Harrian Empire, this planet and all its resources are now ours. Resistance is futile. Compliance will ensure your survival. The response came in the form of a sniper's bullet. The shot rang out from a rooftop, striking one of Xyrith's officers square in the chest. The Harrian staggered but remained standing, his armor absorbing the impact. Xyrath turned toward the source of the shot, his mandibles clicking in irritation. "Primitive," he muttered, "but persistent." Moments later, the Harrians were under fire. A coordinated ambush by Russian special forces erupted from the surrounding buildings, their bullets and rockets streaking through the snow-filled air. The Harrians responded with ruthless efficiency, returning fire and cutting down their attackers with bursts of energy. But the humans did not retreat. They fought with a ferocity that gave even the seasoned Harrian soldiers pause. When one squad was overwhelmed, another emerged, striking from unexpected angles. "These creatures," Xyrath said to himself, watching as yet another human soldier charged at his lines with nothing but a bayonet and raw determination. "They do not know when they are beaten." Similar scenes played out across the planet. In the jungles of the Amazon, Harrian dropships landed amidst the dense foliage, their engines scorching the earth below. The soldiers moved cautiously, their scanners searching for signs of resistance. But the jungle fought back. Traps set by local militias ensnared the Harrians, while elite human operatives picked off their targets with precision. Harrian troops were not used to this kind of warfare, chaotic, asymmetric, and brutal. In the sprawling megacities of Asia, the Harrians faced humanity's technological prowess. Urban drones, hijacked by human hackers, swarmed enemy patrols, blinding their sensors and sowing confusion. Civilians, armed with improvised weapons and sheer courage, turned every alleyway into a potential death trap. Yet, despite humanity's tenacity, it was clear they were fighting a losing battle. The Harrians' superior technology and numbers began to tilt the scales. Cities fell one by one, and Earth's defenders were pushed back to their final strongholds. As dire as the situation seemed, humanity's true strength had yet to reveal itself. In the Siberian tundra, where a Harrian battalion was establishing a forward operating base, the first signs of something extraordinary emerged. The Harrians, arrogant in their belief of superiority, had not accounted for the biting cold. The temperature was far below what most species in the galaxy could endure, yet the humans operating in the region moved through it with practiced ease. As the Harrians set up their perimeter, eerie howls echoed through the frozen wilderness. The soldiers tensed, their rifles scanning the horizon. "What kind of animals survive in this climate?" one of them asked, his voice distorted through his translator. The answer came in the form of a blur, a massive shape moving faster than their sensors could track. A Harrian screamed as a clawed hand tore him from his position, dragging him into the darkness. Then came another, and another. The remaining Harrians opened fire wildly, but their energy bolts found only shadows. When the attackers finally revealed themselves, the Harrians were frozen in fear. Towering werewolves, their fur bristling with frost, charged from the snowbanks. Their claws tore through armor as if it were paper, and their snarls drowned out the Harrians' cries. "Fall back," one of the officers shouted. But there was no retreat. By dawn, the base was nothing more than a smoldering ruin, and the werewolves had disappeared as swiftly as they had arrived. Humanity's resilience was not limited to the battlefield. In the deserts of North Africa, where Harrian forces had landed to secure a key resource hub, strange reports began to surface. Soldiers spoke of shadows that moved independently, of voices that whispered warnings before entire squads vanished without a trace. At first, the Harrians dismissed these accounts as hysteria. But when an entire outpost was found deserted, with no signs of struggle, panic began to set in. Their scans detected no life forms, yet the air itself seemed heavy, as if filled with unseen eyes. In truth, humanity had unleashed its most mysterious warriors, the ghosts. These were not the spirits of the dead, but humans who had become something more, beings of energy and shadow, capable of phasing through walls and disappearing at will. Their presence was marked by an unnatural chill, and their attacks were as swift as they were silent. One Harrian officer, his voice trembling, sent a final transmission before his comms went dead. We are not alone here. There is something wrong with this planet." Though scattered and outnumbered, humanity's defenders began to rally. General Marcus Steele, operating from a hidden command center deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, coordinated the resistance with grim determination. We've shown them our resilience, Steele said in a broadcast to his remaining forces. Now we show them our strength. No retreat. No surrender. Earth is ours, and we will make them regret ever setting foot on it. Across the galaxy, news of humanity's defiance spread like wildfire. The Harrians, so used to swift and decisive victories, found themselves bogged down in a conflict they had grossly underestimated. But as the tide began to turn, another shadow loomed on the horizon. From the depths of space, the Vrisnas, monstrous warriors who lived for battle, were watching. And they hungered for a challenge. The Harrian offensive was relentless. Earth burned under the weight of their war machines, and humanity's forces were being stretched to their limits. Despite their valiant efforts, humanity appeared to be fighting a losing battle. Yet in their desperation, humanity began to unveil the cards they had been holding close to their chest, secrets even the Galactic Union had never suspected. In the ruins of New York City, Lieutenant Aiden Cole led a battered platoon of soldiers through the skeletal remains of a once thriving metropolis. The streets were choked with rubble, and the air was thick with the acrid scent of burning metal. Harrian drones buzzed overhead, their red scanners sweeping the ground for survivors. "Keep low, keep quiet," Cole whispered, gesturing for his team to take cover beneath a collapsed overpass. His voice was calm, but his eyes betrayed the strain of weeks of combat. A young private, barely more than a teenager, spoke up. "Sir, we can't hold this city. We need to fall back." Cole shook his head. "We're not falling back. Not here. Not now. We hold the line. The civilians need more time to evacuate." Before the private could respond, a Harrian patrol rounded the corner, a column of armored soldiers flanked by an imposing mech. The human platoon froze, their breath caught in their throats. Then, from the shadows, a low growl rumbled. At first, it sounded like a trick of the wind, but the Harrians halted, their weapons raised. The growl grew louder, deeper, until it became a deafening roar. From the darkness emerged a massive figure, its silhouette framed by the flickering flames of the city. The creature was unmistakable, a werewolf, its fur matted with blood and ash, its eyes glowing with feral intensity. It leapt into the Harrian formation with terrifying speed, its claws slashing through armor like paper. The mech turned its guns on the beast, but the werewolf dodged with uncanny agility, ripping through its joints with brutal efficiency. Cole and his platoon watched in stunned silence as the werewolf decimated the Harrians before vanishing into the shadows as quickly as it had appeared. What was that?" the private stammered, his face pale. Cole allowed himself a small, grim smile. "That," he said, "is why we don't fall back." In orbit, Admiral Hryn watched the battle unfold on his flagship's central holoscreen. Reports flooded in from his ground commanders, stories of creatures that defied logic and soldiers who fought with reckless abandon. "They're using some kind of genetic modification," one officer suggested, his mandibles clicking nervously. "It's the only explanation." "Genetic modification doesn't explain phantoms," Hryn snapped, slamming a clawed fist onto the console. "Entire squads are disappearing without a trace. And these things, they're not human. They can't be." A junior officer approached, his voice trembling. "Admiral, we've intercepted a broadcast. It's unusual." The holoscreen flickered, and a human figure appeared. The man was tall and pale, his features sharp and angular, his eyes an unsettling shade of crimson. He wore a sleek black uniform, but it was his voice that chilled the room. "To the invaders," he said, his tone calm and deliberate. "You have made a grave mistake. This is our world, and we will not surrender it. You think us weak, divided. You think us prey. But you have no idea what you've awakened." The screen went dark. For a moment, the Harrian said nothing. Then Hryn spoke, his voice low and dangerous. "Find out who he is. And kill him." In a hidden bunker deep beneath the Appalachian Mountains, a council of humanity's most extraordinary individuals convened. These were the variants, the hidden protectors of Earth, whose existence had been carefully kept from both the public and the galaxy at large. At the head of the table sat Viktor Draven, the same man who had broadcast the ominous message to the Harrians. A centuries-old vampire, he exuded an air of authority that demanded respect. Beside him was Kaela, a werewolf pack leader, her amber eyes glinting in the dim light. On her other side sat Dr. Evelyn Mercer, a human scientist who had unlocked the secrets of phasing technology, a discovery that had birthed the so-called ghosts. "We can't stay in the shadows any longer," Viktor said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "The Harrians will not stop until Earth is theirs. It's time we take the fight to them." Kaela growled softly. "You think the humans are ready to accept us? To fight alongside us?" "They don't need to accept us," Viktor replied. "They need to survive. And for that, they'll need our help." Evelyn nodded. "We've been working on integrating our abilities into the broader military effort. The ghosts have already been deployed in Africa and South America, and the werewolves are leading hit-and-run tactics in the north. But we need to coordinate if we're going to push the Harrians back." Viktor leaned forward, his crimson eyes narrowing. "Then let's give them a reason to fear us." The first coordinated strike came at dawn. In Europe, a Harrian command center was under heavy guard, its defenses bolstered by automated turrets and energy barriers. The Harrians believed it to be impenetrable. They were wrong. As the sun rose, the temperature dropped sharply, an unnatural frost spreading across the ground. Harrian sensors malfunctioned, their screens filling with static. Then came the howls, dozens of them echoing through the mist. The werewolves struck first, their claws shredding the barriers with terrifying efficiency. The Harrian guards fired wildly, but their weapons seemed to have little effect. Then the ghosts arrived. They moved through walls and floors like phantoms, their presence marked only by the chilling cold that preceded them. They disabled turrets, sabotaged generators, and struck down Harrian officers with surgical precision. Finally, Viktor himself entered the fray. Moving faster than the eye could follow, he tore through the remaining Harrian forces, his fangs glinting in the dim light. When the battle was over, the command center lay in ruins, and the Harrians had been dealt their first major defeat. The victory sent shockwaves through the galaxy. News of humanity's hidden warriors spread quickly, and the Galactic Union convened an emergency session to discuss the implications. Delegate PHYRN spoke first, his crystalline form shimmering with unease. "These variants, were the humans hiding them from us all along? Or are they something else entirely?" Thras clicked his mandibles. "Either way, it changes everything. If the Harrians can't subdue them, what chance does anyone else have?" Velza, the Serpentine Karath delegate, hissed in frustration. "This is exactly why we should have never accepted them into the Union. They are unpredictable. Dangerous." Despite the heated debate, one thing was clear: humanity was no longer seen as weak or inexperienced. They had become a force to be reckoned with, a species capable of defying the odds and rewriting the rules of galactic warfare. In the ruins of Geneva, a secret summit convened beneath the remnants of the United Nations headquarters. Delegates from the Galactic Union had been smuggled to Earth to witness humanity's struggle firsthand. Among them was Delegate PHYRN of the Crystalline Mirith, Velza of the Serpentine Karath, and Thrask, the insectoid diplomat whose race prided itself on logic and strategy. The chamber was dimly lit, with holographic displays projecting the war's current state. Footage of battles played in the background, Harrian soldiers being torn apart by werewolves, ghosts phasing through walls to disable enemy tech, and humans fighting with unyielding ferocity. General Marcus Steele stood before them, flanked by Viktor Draven and Dr. Evelyn Mercer. Steele's voice was commanding, yet tinged with desperation. "You've seen what we're capable of. You know what we're up against. The Harrians won't stop until Earth is theirs, and the Vrisnas are circling like vultures. We need your help." Velza's serpentine body coiled tighter, her forked tongue flicking in agitation. "Help you? You expect us to risk our worlds for a species that harbors monsters?" They're not monsters, Viktor interjected, his crimson eyes glowing faintly. We are humanity, just as much as the soldiers in your footage. We've protected this planet for centuries, from threats most of you can't even comprehend. And now, we're offering to stand beside you. Thras clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. Your resilience is undeniable. But so is your unpredictability. What assurance do we have that these variants will not turn against us once the Harrians are defeated? Dr. Mercer stepped forward. Assurance? Look around you. Do you think we had a choice in hiding what we are? The galaxy would have eradicated us the moment it found out. But now, our survival is tied to yours. If Earth falls, do you think the Harrians, or the Vrisnas, will stop there? You need us as much as we need you. The room fell silent. It was Delegate Phyrn who finally spoke, his crystalline voice resonating like a chime. Perhaps, you are what this galaxy needs. A species that can stand where others would fall. The summit adjourned with no formal agreement, but the seeds of an alliance had been planted. Humanity's plea had not gone unheard. Far above Earth, Admiral Hryn of the Harrian fleet reviewed his latest reports with growing frustration. The humans were unpredictable, yes, but now their methods were becoming maddeningly effective. His forces were losing not because of inferior technology, but because of their inability to counter humanity's unorthodox tactics. Enough, Hryn growled, his mandibles clicking in agitation. If brute force won't work, we will outthink them. Harrian engineers worked tirelessly to adapt their technology. Energy barriers were recalibrated to block phased attacks from the ghosts, and specialized thermal sensors were deployed to track the werewolves in even the harshest environments. But their most ambitious project was the creation of an experimental superweapon. Codenamed Eviscerator, it was designed to target Earth's atmosphere itself, rendering the planet uninhabitable. Hryn planned to deploy it as a last resort, a reminder to humanity and the galaxy of the Harrians' unrelenting will to dominate. The Vrisnas did not watch from the sidelines for long. On the edges of the solar system, their biomechanical ships began to emerge from the void, hulking monstrosities that seemed more alive than machine. Each vessel pulsed with an ominous red glow, their surfaces writhing as if alive. In one of these ships, the Vrisna warlord Kazirath surveyed the battlefield with cruel delight. Kazirath was an imposing figure, his exoskeleton covered in jagged spikes, his 6 eyes glimmering with a primal hunger. Harrians, Kazirath hissed, watching their fleet on a holographic display. Always so precise. So predictable. His mandibles twitched as he turned his attention to the humans. But these creatures, they are chaos given form. They will make for excellent prey. The Vrisnas didn't care for conquest or strategy. They sought only the thrill of battle, the joy of crushing their enemies. And now, Earth had become the perfect stage for their bloodlust. Back on Earth, humanity's resistance was growing stronger. With their newfound confidence and the potential of Galactic Union support, they began to strike deeper into Harrian territory. One such mission, led by Elena Grant, targeted a Harrian orbital facility critical to the Eviscerator project. The mission was daring, almost suicidal, a small team of variants and elite human soldiers infiltrating a heavily guarded station. The team included Kaela, the werewolf leader, 2 ghost operatives, and Viktor himself. Each brought their unique abilities to the mission. Kaela's raw strength tore through Harrian defenses, while the ghosts disabled critical systems with precision. Viktor, with centuries of experience, orchestrated the chaos with deadly efficiency. The station's interior was a labyrinth of steel corridors and glowing conduits, its walls vibrating faintly with the hum of the Eviscerator's charging core. Viktor Draven moved through the shadows with calculated precision, his every step silent despite the chaos erupting around him. Behind him, Kaela and the ghosts were holding off Harrian reinforcements, their battle echoing faintly down the halls. This was Viktor's moment. He had one objective: disable the Eviscerator's command systems and confront the architect of Earth's potential annihilation. The control chamber was a massive, circular room dominated by a central console that pulsed with ominous crimson light. Overhead, A holographic projection displayed Earth, its atmosphere highlighted in a vibrant red as the superweapon calculated its trajectory. Commander Xyrath stood at the heart of it all, his back turned to Viktor as he issued orders to his subordinates. The Harrian commander was imposing, his armor adorned with intricate carvings signifying countless victories. His clawed hands danced over the console, inputting commands with cold precision. Viktor stepped into the room, his movements deliberate, his presence commanding. "Impressive," he said, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "But it's all for nothing." Xyrath froze for a moment before turning to face him. His mandibles flared, and his multifaceted eyes narrowed as he took in Viktor's figure. "You are not human," he hissed, his voice a low, guttural growl. "What are you? Some genetic experiment? An abomination born of desperation?" Viktor smirked, baring his fangs. "Let's just say I'm the reason humans tell stories to keep the lights on at night." "But you, Commander, what are you? Another cog in the Harrian war machine? Another nameless villain too blind to see the incoming?" Xyrath's claws flexed, the sound of their scraping filling the air. "I am Xyrath, conqueror of Erythia, breaker of the Nethalian front. I am the spear that will pierce humanity's defiance. And you," his mandibles clicked in disdain. "You are nothing but a parasite clinging to a doomed species." Viktor stepped forward, his movements unnervingly smooth. "Parasite? Funny. I see it differently. You invade my planet. You kill my people. And you think yourself a savior? No, Commander. You're just food." Xyrath snarled, his posture shifting into a predatory stance. He lunged, his claws slicing through the air with deadly speed. Viktor moved faster, sidestepping effortlessly and delivering a precise strike to Xyrath's side. The blow was so powerful that the Harrian staggered, his exoskeleton cracking. "You'll have to do better," Viktor taunted, his crimson eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Xyrath roared, regaining his footing. "You think you can match me? A single creature against the might of the Harrian Empire?" He struck again, this time feinting low before slashing upward. Viktor blocked the attack with his arm, the claws tearing through his sleeve but stopping short of flesh. Viktor's smirk widened, revealing his sharp teeth. "Your empire? Your might? They're built on fear. But fear doesn't work on the dead." Before Xyrath could react, Viktor unleashed a flurry of attacks, his movements a blur. Each strike was precise, exploiting the weaknesses in Xyrath's armor. Sparks flew as Viktor's claws raked across the Harrian's chest, tearing through layers of metal and sinew. Xyrath howled in pain but refused to back down. "You will die for this insolence," he roared, activating a hidden energy blade that extended from his gauntlet. The blade hummed with lethal energy, its edge glowing a vibrant blue. "Finally," Viktor said, his voice dripping with mockery. "A little effort." The fight intensified. Xyrath's blade slashed through the air with blistering speed, each strike narrowly missing Viktor, who danced around the attacks with supernatural agility. The two combatants moved with inhuman speed, their battle a blur of motion and fury. But Viktor wasn't just faster, he was smarter. He waited for Xyrath to overcommit, then struck. Grabbing the commander's wrist mid-swing, Viktor twisted violently, shattering the joint and forcing the blade to drop to the floor. Xyrath fell to his knees, clutching his broken arm. He looked up at Viktor, hatred burning in his eyes. "You will never win," he spat. Viktor knelt, bringing his face level with Xyrath's. "We've already won," he whispered. "Because you still don't understand what you're up against." In one swift motion, Viktor drove his hand into the console behind Xyrath, ripping out the core. The room was plunged into darkness, the holographic projection of Earth flickering and disappearing. The eviscerator was silenced. Xyrath let out a guttural roar, but Viktor silenced him with a backhanded strike that sent him sprawling. As the chamber filled with the sounds of approaching reinforcements, Viktor stood over the defeated commander. "Tell your empire," Viktor said, his voice cold and commanding, "that Earth is not theirs to take. And the next time you send someone to kill us, send someone worth the effort." With that, Viktor turned and disappeared into the shadows, his cloak billowing behind him. The last thing Xyrath saw before losing consciousness was the faint glow of Viktor's crimson eyes. The Harrians, now desperate, redoubled their efforts. Their fleet expanded, their ground forces intensified, and their tactics grew more ruthless. Meanwhile, the Vrisnas began launching raids, testing both humanity and the Harrians. Earth became a crucible, a proving ground for the galaxy's future. And in the midst of the chaos, humanity's true strength began to shine, not just their resilience or their variance, but their ability to unite in the face of overwhelming odds. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Union began to rally its own forces. Inspired by humanity's defiance, other species prepared to join the fight. The galaxy was on the brink of a full-scale war, with Earth at its epicenter.